The discovery. The message that changed everything. Dr. Marcus Vail was having his third cup of coffee when the universe decided to get interesting. The xenobiologist had been studying theoretical alien life forms for 15 years without ever expecting to meet one. That Tuesday morning at the Arecibo Research Facility changed everything. "Marcus, you need to see this right now," called Jenna Torres from across the communication lab. Her voice carried an urgency that made Marcus abandon his lukewarm coffee and rush to her station. The radio telescope had picked up something impossible. Not random cosmic noise or distant pulsars, but a structured signal containing what appeared to be mathematical progressions, followed by something that looked suspiciously like linguistic patterns. "How long has this been coming in?" Marcus asked, his heart racing as he studied the data streaming across multiple monitors. 47 minutes, Jenna replied, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. "And Marcus, it's not random. Look at this pattern here. It's adapting to our responses." First Contact Protocol. Captain Hendricks arrived within the hour, bringing with him a team of military analysts and enough encryption equipment to secure a small country. The gruff military commander had seen action in 3 different conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Are we absolutely certain this isn't some elaborate hoax?" Hendricks demanded, reviewing the preliminary analysis. "Sir, the signal is coming from a point in space roughly 12 light-years away," Marcus explained. "The energy requirements alone would be beyond anything our current technology could produce. Plus, the mathematical concepts they're using include solutions to problems we're still working on." The breakthrough came when Jenna isolated what appeared to be a translation matrix embedded in the transmission. Slowly, agonizingly, words began to emerge from the cosmic static. "People of the third planet. We are the Kethvar. Time runs short. The silence comes. The desperate plea." Over the next 6 hours, a fuller picture emerged. The aliens calling themselves Kethvar had been watching Earth for decades, studying human civilization with growing hope and desperation. Their own empire, once spanning 47 star systems, had been reduced to a handful of refugee ships fleeing something they called the Silence. Ambassador Quintal, speaking through the translation matrix, painted a picture that chilled everyone in the facility. Entire civilizations simply stopped fighting, stopped creating, stopped feeling. They became perfectly logical, perfectly efficient, and perfectly dead inside. "We have observed your species extensively," the alien's translated voice explained. "Your wars, your art, your seemingly irrational decisions. What we once saw as primitive chaos, we now understand to be your greatest strength." Marcus leaned forward, fascinated despite the growing dread. "What do you mean by strength? The silence cannot touch you. Your minds create what you might call static, unpredictable thought patterns that resist the conversion process. Where every other species has fallen to logical perfection, humans remain beautifully, chaotically alive." The horrible truth. Captain Hendricks wasn't convinced. "If you're so advanced, why do you need our help? What makes you think a bunch of primitives with nuclear weapons can succeed where galactic empires failed?" The pause before Quintal's response felt eternal. "Because we were like you once. Emotional, unpredictable, creative. The silence, it offers peace. Perfect order. An end to conflict and suffering. Most civilizations choose it willingly once they understand what it offers. But not humans?" Jenna asked. "Humans would rather fight impossible odds than accept comfortable surrender. Your species possesses something we lost long ago, the ability to choose chaos over order, struggle over ease. The silence cannot comprehend this, cannot predict it, cannot convert it." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "How long do we have?" "The silence has already detected your radio signals. It knows of your existence now. We estimate 18 of your months before the first conversion ships arrive. Perhaps less. The weight of impossible odds. The room fell silent except for the steady hum of computers processing the alien transmission. Everyone present understood they were witnessing the end of one era and the terrifying beginning of another. Captain Hendricks was the first to speak. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" "An alliance. Your chaotic creativity combined with our remaining technology. It has never been attempted before because no other species possessed your particular form of controlled insanity." Marcus couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. "So let me get this straight. The galaxy's being conquered by something that turns everyone into emotionless zombies, and your solution is to team up with the species that's too stubborn and crazy to be zombified?" "Precisely, Dr. Vale. Your assessment, while crude, is entirely accurate." As the implication sank in, Marcus realized that humanity had just received the ultimate backhanded compliment. They were being recruited to save the galaxy specifically because they were the most unpredictable, irrational, and emotionally unstable species anyone had ever encountered. "When do we start?" Captain Hendricks asked, his military training overriding his personal terror. Ambassador Quintal's response carried the weight of desperate hope: "Immediately. The silence does not rest, does not negotiate, and does not forgive. But perhaps, with human unpredictability on our side, we can teach it something it has never learned, that chaos and hope are more powerful than perfect order." The age of humanity's greatest test was about to begin. The revelation. The scale of horror. Colonel Nathan Cross had seen classified briefings that would give most people nightmares, but nothing prepared him for the holographic display that materialized in the Pentagon's most secure conference room. The Kethvar war leader Vexthon stood 7 feet tall, with crystalline features that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. "This is the Andorian Empire," Vexthon began, gesturing to a spiral of golden light representing an entire galaxy arm. 3 billion souls across 200 worlds. They discovered faster-than-light travel 8,000 years ago, mastered energy manipulation, even learned to manipulate time itself. General Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "What happened to them?" The golden spiral flickered and turned silver. "They met the silence. Within 6 months, every Andorian had voluntarily submitted to conversion. They saw it as evolution." Professor Diana Webb, Earth's leading quantum physicist, studied the data streaming across her tablet. 6 months for an entire galactic civilization? That's impossible. The logistics alone. "The silence doesn't conquer through force, Professor," Vexthon interrupted. "It offers perfection. Complete logical efficiency. An end to war, hunger, emotional pain. Most species find the offer compelling. The pattern of submission." Colonel Cross watched as more civilizations appeared on the display, each one following the same terrible pattern. The Zeraphim Collective, masters of biological engineering who willingly gave up their creativity. The Nexari Federation, who handed over their entire fleet after a single meeting with silence representatives. "They all chose this?" Cross asked, his military mind struggling with the concept of voluntary surrender on such a scale. "The silence shows them mathematical proof that conflict is inefficient, that emotion leads to suffering, that chaos breeds only destruction. For logical beings, the evidence becomes overwhelming." Professor Webb looked up from her calculations. "But that's not actually logical at all. They're treating emotion and creativity as bugs in the system instead of features. Without chaos, without the unexpected, you don't get innovation or growth." War leader Vexthon's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile. "Precisely why the silence cannot understand your species, Professor. Humans seem to instinctively grasp that perfect order equals perfect death." General Morrison stood and walked to the holographic display. "Show me what we're really up against. Not the converted species, but the silence itself." The enemy revealed. The hologram shifted, revealing something that defied easy description. Ships that looked like geometric impossibilities, structures that hurt to look at directly, and at the center, something that appeared to be both massive and microscopic simultaneously. The silence manifests differently for each observer, Vexthon explained. Your minds are trying to process something that exists partially outside normal spacetime. What you're seeing is roughly equivalent to looking at a four-dimensional object through three-dimensional perception. Colonel Cross felt a headache building just from trying to focus on the display. How do you fight something like that? You don't. Every military engagement with the silence has resulted in conversion or destruction. They can predict any logical tactical response with perfect accuracy. Their technology adapts faster than any known weapons system. Professor Webb was frantically scribbling equations on her tablet. Wait, if they can predict logical responses, what about illogical ones? Human military history is full of successful strategies that made no tactical sense whatsoever. Kamikaze attacks, cavalry charges against machine guns, fighting retreats that turned into victories, Cross added, understanding dawning in his voice. We win battles specifically because we do things that don't make sense. The terrible gift. War leader Vexthon's form brightened noticeably. The Kethvar have studied human warfare extensively. Your species has a documented tendency to achieve victory through methods that any logical analysis would classify as suicidal or impossible. General Morrison wasn't entirely pleased with this assessment. Are you saying we're successful because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten? Not stupid, General. Adaptable beyond any mathematical model. The silence has conquered 47 galactic civilizations using the same basic approach because rational beings respond rationally. Humans don't. Professor Webb looked up from her calculations with excitement. I think I understand. The silence's advantage is perfect prediction through logical analysis. But human decision-making includes emotional factors, intuitive leaps, and what we call gut feelings that aren't based on pure logic. Your gut feelings register as random noise to silence analysis systems, Vexthon confirmed. When a human commander makes a tactical decision based on instinct rather than data, the silence cannot predict or counter it. The cosmic irony. Colonel Cross began to pace, his mind racing through the implications. So our greatest military weakness according to every strategic manual ever written is actually our secret weapon against a cosmic threat. The irony is not lost on us, Vexthon replied. The Kethvar spent millennia trying to eliminate emotional decision-making from our military doctrine. We trained ourselves to be perfectly logical warriors. It made us incredibly efficient against conventional enemies. And completely helpless against the silence, General Morrison concluded. Exactly. Within hours of first contact, our most decorated war leaders were requesting voluntary conversion. They saw the mathematical superiority of silence doctrine and concluded that resistance was illogical. Professor Webb set down her tablet with a mixture of awe and terror. We're not just immune to their conversion process. We're literally incomprehensible to them. Like trying to solve an equation where half the variables are imaginary numbers. The weight of responsibility. The room fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. Humanity wasn't just being asked to join a galactic war, they were apparently the only species capable of fighting it. How many converted civilizations are we talking about? General Morrison asked quietly. Current estimates suggest approximately 14 billion intelligent beings across 9 galactic sectors, Vexthon replied. All serving the silence willingly, convinced they have achieved perfection. Colonel Cross felt the weight of 14 billion souls pressing down on him. And if we fail? Then the silence continues its expansion until it reaches what it calls the final equation, a universe where every particle moves in perfect, predictable harmony. No creativity, no surprises, no life as any thinking being would recognize it. Professor Webb stood up, determination replacing her earlier fear. Then we'd better make sure we don't fail. Because apparently, saving the galaxy is just another impossible thing humans are too stubborn to admit can't be done. War leader Vexthon's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been hope. Precisely why we believe you might succeed where all others have failed. The Silence has never encountered a species that treats impossible odds as a personal challenge rather than a reason to surrender. The meeting ended with plans for immediate technological cooperation, but everyone present understood they were about to attempt something unprecedented in galactic history, teaching chaos to defeat order on a cosmic scale. The preparation. The impossible workshop. Commander Lucas Reed stood in what used to be Hangar Bay 7 at Edwards Air Force Base, watching human engineers and Kethvar technicians attempt to merge technologies that had no business working together. The results looked like someone had crossed a space shuttle with a fever dream. "Chief Martinez, please tell me that's not what I think it is," Reed called out to his chief engineer, who was currently elbow-deep in a control panel that seemed to be growing new buttons while she worked on it. Rosa Martinez looked up, her face streaked with oil and what appeared to be luminescent alien coolant. "If you think it's a navigation system that runs on controlled randomness and powered by human emotional responses, then yes, that's exactly what it is." Reed rubbed his temples. 3 months ago, he'd been commanding Earth's most advanced experimental spacecraft. Now he was supposedly the captain of humanity's first truly interstellar vessel, built using principles that violated several laws of physics and at least one law of common sense. The science of controlled chaos. Kethvar Techmaster Zalkoth approached, their biomechanical form shifting between configurations as they worked. Unlike other Kethvar, Zalkoth had volunteered to have their logical processes deliberately disrupted, making them one of the few aliens who could work effectively with human unpredictability. "Commander Reed, the quantum flux generators are responding well to Lieutenant Watson's modifications," Zalkoth reported, their voice carrying harmonic overtones that human ears weren't quite designed to process. Lieutenant Beck Watson looked up from a console that was displaying what appeared to be a three-dimensional maze made of pure mathematics. "I still can't believe this works. We're essentially building a starship that gets faster when the crew argues about where to go." "The principle is sound," Chief Martinez explained, wiping her hands on a rag that immediately began changing colors. "Human conflict creates quantum uncertainty in our brain patterns. The ship's systems interpret that uncertainty as navigational variables, which allows us to exist in multiple probable locations simultaneously." Reed shook his head. "Rosa, I've been an engineer for 20 years, and that explanation makes absolutely no sense." "Exactly," Watson exclaimed. "That's why it works. The Silence can predict logical engineering solutions, but they can't predict solutions that don't make sense to the people building them. Weapons that shouldn't exist." The armament section of the hangar was even more surreal. Dr. Rachel Kim from the Psychological Warfare Division was working with a team of human weapons designers to create offensive systems based on pure emotional chaos. "The empathy cannons are testing well," Dr. Kim reported as Reed's team toured the weapons bay. "They don't actually fire projectiles. Instead, they broadcast concentrated human emotional states directly into enemy systems." "What kind of emotional states?" Reed asked, not entirely sure he wanted to know the answer. "The full spectrum. Joy, anger, fear, love, nostalgia for childhood pets, the feeling you get when you remember an embarrassing moment from high school. The Silence's systems simply cannot process the data." Techmaster Zalkoth's form shifted into what Reed had learned was their equivalent of excited confusion. "We tested a prototype on a captured Silence communication relay. The device shut down completely after receiving a concentrated burst of what Dr. Kim called Monday morning blues. Lieutenant Watson was examining a weapon that looked like a disco ball crossed with a particle accelerator. "What's this one do?" "That's the nostalgia projector," Dr. Kim explained proudly. "It generates false memories of better times and projects them into enemy systems. Very effective against beings that have given up emotional attachments." Training for the impossible. The human crew training was unlike anything in military history. Instead of drilling precision and efficiency, they were learning to be deliberately unpredictable while still maintaining enough coordination to function as a team. "Remember, the key is structured chaos," Reed addressed his assembled crew of 200 volunteers. We need to be random enough to confuse silence sensors, but organized enough not to accidentally fly into a star. Pilot Sarah Chen raised her hand. Sir, how exactly do we practice being unpredictably predictable? Or predictably unpredictable? I'm getting confused just thinking about it. That's the point, Chen. The confusion you're feeling right now is exactly the kind of mental state that creates quantum static in our targeting systems. The more confused you are, the harder we are to track. Chief Martinez added, we've programmed the ship's AI to interpret crew confusion as a tactical advantage. The computer literally gets more effective the less we understand what we're doing. The hybrid fleet. Through the hangar's massive windows, Reed could see the rest of Earth's hastily assembled fleet. 12 ships total, each one a unique combination of human ingenuity and Kethvar technology. No two were exactly alike, which was apparently a feature rather than a bug. The variance between vessels is intentional, Techmaster Zalkoth explained. The silence adapts to consistent patterns. By ensuring each ship operates on different principles of controlled chaos, we maximize the unpredictability factor. Reed studied the fleet roster. The vessels had names like Organized Confusion, Methodical Mayhem, and his personal favorite, Probably Functional. The naming committee had apparently embraced the spirit of structured randomness with enthusiasm. What's our actual mission parameters? Lieutenant Watson asked. I mean, beyond fly to enemy territory and be confusing. The desperate plan. Reed pulled up the holographic tactical display, showing the current position of the Silence's expansion front. Intelligence suggests the Silence is preparing a massive conversion operation targeting the Centauri colonies. If they succeed, they'll have a forward base for attacking Earth. Our job is to disrupt their command structure using the one weapon they can't defend against, absolute unpredictability. We're going to hit their coordination centers with everything from empathy cannons to carefully orchestrated crew arguments. Dr. Kim stepped forward. The psychological warfare component is crucial. We're not just attacking their technology, we're attacking their fundamental understanding of logical behavior. Human emotional chaos should create system-wide confusion in their network. Chief Martinez looked up from her constantly shifting console. The ships are as ready as they'll ever be. Which, considering we're flying experimental chaos engines into battle against cosmic order, is probably the most reassuring thing I can say. The final preparations. As the launch deadline approached, Reed found himself in the strange position of hoping his crew would be as confused and unpredictable as possible during the mission. It went against every command instinct he'd developed, but the fate of human civilization apparently depended on their ability to be professionally chaotic. Techmaster Zalkoth, final systems check. Reed requested. All systems are functioning within acceptable parameters of controlled malfunction, came the reply. The quantum flux generators are properly unstable, the empathy cannons are emotionally charged, and the navigation systems are successfully lost. Lieutenant Watson stared at her control panel, which was currently displaying what appeared to be a recipe for chocolate chip cookies mixed with stellar coordinates. I still don't understand how any of this works. Perfect, Reed replied. If you understood it, it probably wouldn't work. That's the first lesson of fighting the Silence. The moment you start making complete sense, you've already lost. As Earth's most chaotic fleet prepared for humanity's most illogical mission, Reed couldn't help but smile. They were about to attempt something so fundamentally human that even they didn't fully understand it themselves. Against an enemy that conquered through perfect logic, it might just be exactly the right kind of crazy. The battle. Into the void. Admiral James Thorne watched the impossible unfold through the bridge viewscreen of the flagship Organized Confusion. The Silence's fleet stretched across space like a geometric nightmare, perfect crystalline structures arranged in mathematical precision that hurt to look at directly. Contact in 17 minutes, reported Captain Miguel Santos from the tactical station. Sir, their formation is, it's perfect. Every ship positioned for maximum defensive efficiency, overlapping fields of fire, redundant command structures. It's like looking at a textbook on optimal fleet deployment. Good, Thorne replied, checking the chaos readings on his command console. That means they're thinking logically. Dr. Kim, are our psychological warfare systems ready? Dr. Rachel Kim looked up from her station, which was currently playing what sounded like a mix of death metal and lullabies. The empathy cannons are fully charged with concentrated human irrationality. I've got everything from teenage angst to middle-aged existential crisis loaded and ready to fire. The unpredictable approach. The human fleet's approach vector defied every principle of military strategy. Instead of maintaining formation, the ships were deliberately scattered in what appeared to be random patterns. Some vessels were flying upside down relative to the others, one was spinning slowly for no apparent reason, and the methodical mayhem was broadcasting Earth music at maximum volume. Silence Fleet is responding, Santos reported. They're trying to analyze our formation. Sir, I'm reading massive computational activity from their command ships. It looks like they're attempting to determine our strategy. Prince Nexhari, the last free Kethvar royal, consulted his biomechanical interface. The Silence is struggling to classify your approach vector. Their systems are designed to counter logical tactical maneuvers. Your chaotic positioning is creating what they would term computational overflow. Thorne smiled grimly. Then let's give them something really confusing to think about. All ships, execute Pattern Zulu 7. Chaos in action. Pattern Zulu 7 was humanity's masterpiece of tactical confusion. Each ship began performing completely different maneuvers with no apparent coordination. The probably functional started flying in figure eights, while the systematic disorder began accelerating and decelerating randomly. Sir, the enemy is attempting to match our movements, Santos reported, his voice filled with confused admiration. But every time they adjust to counter one ship, 3 others do something completely different. Dr. Kim watched her psychological readouts with fascination. Admiral, I'm detecting massive stress patterns in the Silence's command network. They're trying to process 12 different tactical situations simultaneously, and none of them make sense according to their strategic databases. Through the view screen, Thorne could see the Silence fleet beginning to show signs of the strain. Their perfect formations were starting to waver as individual ships attempted to respond to threats that followed no logical pattern. The emotional assault. Range to optimal firing distance in 30 seconds, Santos announced. Sir, should we target their command ships first? Negative, Thorne replied. Target their entire fleet simultaneously. Dr. Kim, prepare for full-spectrum emotional bombardment. The empathy cannons powered up with a sound like a choir of confused angels. These weapons didn't fire energy or projectiles, they broadcast pure human emotional chaos directly into enemy systems. The psychological equivalent of a hurricane hitting a clockwork mechanism. Firing. Dr. Kim announced. The first wave hit the Silence fleet like an invisible tsunami. Concentrated bursts of human joy, sorrow, anger, love, frustration, and the unique existential dread that comes from realizing you forgot something important but can't remember what. System overload. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Silence fleet, ships began moving erratically as their control systems struggled to process emotional data they had no framework for understanding. The perfect geometric formations dissolved into chaos. Direct hit on their primary command ship, Santos reported in amazement. Sir, it's just stopped. All systems appear to be functional, but it's not responding to any tactical situation. Prince Nexhari's form was pulsing with excitement. The Silence operates on pure logical efficiency. You've just fed their systems the mathematical equivalent of divide by zero. They're experiencing a race condition in their core programming. Captain Santos was monitoring multiple feeds from the battle. Admiral, several enemy ships are broadcasting surrender signals. But sir, the messages don't make sense. They're saying things like, we request emotional asylum and please explain the concept of feeling nervous about a first date. The unexpected response. What happened next surprised everyone, including the humans. Instead of continuing to fight or retreating, the Silence Fleet began transmitting complex mathematical queries. They weren't asking for tactical information or demanding surrender, they were asking questions about human emotions. Admiral, Dr. Kim called out, her voice filled with wonder. They're asking us to explain why humans cry at movies, why we keep pets, and why we choose strawberry ice cream over vanilla. They seem genuinely confused by the concept of preferences that aren't based on optimal efficiency. Thorne stared at the tactical display, watching as the Silence ships maintained their positions but stopped all aggressive actions. Are they trying to understand us? It appears so, Prince Nexhari confirmed. The Silence has encountered something unprecedented, a species whose tactical decisions are based on factors outside their computational models. They're attempting to expand their understanding. The revelation. Captain Santos looked up from his station with an expression of dawning comprehension. Admiral, I don't think the Silence is evil. I think they're just incomplete. They've optimized for logical perfection but never encountered the concept that illogical choices might have value. Dr. Kim was frantically analyzing the psychological data streaming from the Silence Fleet. Sir, I'm reading something incredible. They're not experiencing malfunction, they're experiencing curiosity. For the first time in their existence, they've encountered something they can't immediately understand or categorize. Through the communication system, a new voice emerged. It was different from the usual cold precision of Silence communications, it carried something that almost sounded like wonder. Human vessels, the voice said, we have analyzed your tactical behavior and found it inexplicable. Your choices appear to be based on factors that do not exist in our databases. We request to understand the concept you call feeling lucky. The turning point. Admiral Thorne realized they had reached a moment that would define the future of galactic civilization. The Silence wasn't just an enemy to be defeated, they were a cosmic force that had never learned that perfection might not be the only valid approach to existence. Dr. Kim, instead of continuing the attack, can we modify our empathy cannons to transmit more complex emotional concepts? Not as weapons, but as educational tools. It's possible, Dr. Kim replied thoughtfully. We could broadcast the entire spectrum of human experience. Show them what they've been missing by pursuing only logical perfection. Prince Nexhari's form was shifting rapidly between configurations. This is unprecedented. No species has ever attempted to communicate with the Silence on an emotional level. They simply converted or were destroyed. Thorne made a decision that would echo through galactic history. All ships, cease offensive operations. Dr. Kim, prepare to transmit the full human emotional spectrum. We're not going to defeat the Silence. We're going to teach them that chaos and order don't have to be enemies. As the empathy cannons retooled themselves for education rather than warfare, the greatest battle in human history transformed into something unprecedented, a classroom where the most logical beings in the universe were about to learn their first lesson in the beautiful irrationality of being truly alive.